Welcome to my kitchen. I'm Chef Peggy Hall, and today we'll be cooking in my home. We will start with dessert. I will start making a decadent chocolate cake. And I will start by melting the chocolate and some butter. Let's turn on the light. So I have water in this pot, and I only want it to simmer, so we will leave the chocolate off until I see that it's simmering. Then I'll turn it down in order to not cook the chocolate. So in your box you will find all these ingredients, and you just need a pot with about 4 cups of water in it, and when it comes to the boil you can just put the bottom of your bowl should not be touching the water, and you have to be careful not to get water in your chocolate because that's not a good thing. So, and after that, so this is a springform pan that I'll be cooking it in, and we butter the bottom of the whole pan first. And up the sides. So it's easy to take off. The cake doesn't break. And as a second precaution, I have some wax paper. And you just take a square just slightly larger than the diameter of your springform pan, and just cut it around. Where are my scissors going? Just cut it around. Place it in the pan. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to take it anyway. Just easier to remove it just like that. And then just butter the top of the paper as well, and the sides, so that the cake doesn't get stuck when you're boiling. So let's check the water. It's almost simmering. Wash my hands off. So I'm now going to separate the eggs, because we're going to whip the whites, because that's going to be the leavening for the cake, because there's no flour, there's no baking powder or baking soda. It's just the air incorporated into the whites of the eggs that are going to make it rise and be delicious. I first tasted a similar cake to this when I went to San Francisco, because I was going to take a ship to Australia, and for my going away meal, my cousins took me to the wharf to see if my ship had come in, and bought this fabulous cake. Just, I don't know, just like a soft chocolate bar. It was delicious. So for a number of years after, I tried to duplicate it, and I find it. I am gluten intolerant, so it has no flour. So I had to learn how to cook without flour. I'm also have a sensitivity to potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, all the good stuff. So I've adapted a lot of my cooking because it's not much fun to cook and not be able to eat it. Careful not to get any yellow in your whites because it won't hold. Just in case it's the last one, I'll put it in here. Because it happens. It's best to put them in one at a time, and then if you do break one, it doesn't matter. I did eat chocolate decadent cake, and I did go to Australia. Which is one of the reasons we are going to have lamb in our recipe. I wasn't very familiar with lamb, having been brought up on a farm, dairy farm and beef, and we ate beef and that kind of thing. So the water is bubbling. Just have to keep your eye on it. It doesn't take much heat to melt the chocolate in the butter. While we do the rest of the egg, rest of the batter. So I'm going to turn on the mixer now to do the whites. As you see, the chocolate's just and the butter are just about there. So I've turned the stove off because it will melt with the residual heat, and we want it to cool down anyway because we're going to put the egg yolks in here, and it has to be cooled down so the egg yolks don't cook in the chocolate. That might be good though. So you just watch inside the bowl, and if you watch carefully, you can see the ripples as it goes around, and they become more distinct when they're just about ready. Before that's kind of level, and then I'll show you how. I will let you see how. See the ripples now? That's when you know it's done. It's kind of a messy cake to make, but good chocolatey messy. I'm just stirring it to try and get it to cool a little. A little bit of butter is not quite there yet. Doing that, it's always good to, even though it's a cake, it's always good to have a pinch of salt and everything, because it kind of brings up the flavor. So now I'm going to incorporate the egg yolks into the chocolate. Looks pretty before you cook it. Try to kind of fold it in. That also gives it a little bit more air, because we're going to get this almost stirred, and then I'm going to add about a quarter of the egg whites and fold it in gradually, because they're two very different consistencies, and if you add a little of one to the other when you're combining two unlike ingredients, it's easier for them to combine. So you lighten it with a little bit. Let's put this over here. So you can see that the peaks are quite strong. And so I will take the little flecks in there. I was using sugar that was infused with vanilla beans. So the little bits that are in here is vanilla. So just fold it over, because you don't want to lose that air from the egg whites. There, I think we can put the rest in. Just cut it down the sides and into the middle. Okay, so it's almost all the same color. It can be a little tiny bit streaky, but as long as you get all the chocolate, so there isn't like a big hunk of chocolate on the bottom. So make sure you scoop right down, and then you just gently pour it in the center of the thing, because you don't want to disturb the paper. And then just gently encourage it to spread out to the sides. It will rise up, so you need a pan that's bigger than. Okay, I'm going to put it in the oven. Let's put it in the center of the oven. And the oven is on at 275, and it takes about 50 minutes to cook. Okay, now I'm going to make the second dish, or start the second dish, which is quinoa. Quinoa is well, people think it's a grain, but actually it is the seed of a broadleaf plant. It's is very common, and I was in Ecuador and Peru last year, and they sell it on the street, and they eat it like well, they have 300 kinds of potatoes, but they eat quinoa like we do potatoes. It is a very unusual product because it has carbs, but it also has protein. We're going to cook the quinoa. It's a 2-to-1 like rice. 2 cups of water to a cup of rice, but I'm only doing about 1/4 today. I'm doing 3 different kinds. I'm doing, this is a red one. And the reason I like to do the red one, if you've not ever cooked before, because you can see they kind of burst and make a halo, and then you know that it's almost done. Just get a measuring cup. So this is black and white quinoa. They taste very much the same, but they just look different. Okay, so I'm stirring now to mix the two together and to help it start to boil. It's a very complete food. When the European people came to invade Peru, they were very surprised that the army could go for hours and hours up and down the Sacred Valley, and they were wondering why they were so strong. And they discovered it was because they ate quinoa, and because it's a carbohydrate and a protein, it metabolizes more slowly, and so they could go for all day with just eating quinoa. So what did the Europeans do? They burned all the fields. Okay, so this is just about to the boil now, and it will take about 10 minutes. You will see the little halos burst, and at that point you can just leave it to cook the rest of the way by itself. Turn off the heat. Okay, we're going to, while this is boiling, we're going to start the nuts for the Dukkah. Dukkah is a Mideastern, it can be a dip, and it could be an appetizer, it could be a rub for your meat, you can sprinkle it on salads, and it can be made with almost any kind of nuts. But you try to get raw nuts, because you're going to cook them now. Okay, the quinoa is starting to cook. Just check that it's not stuck to the bottom of the pan. Turn it down. I put it in you should put it in probably a deeper pot. I just put it in so it'd be easier for you to see it cooking. Okay, so the Brazil nuts and cashews are starting to get hot. So you can add the pistachios in, because they're a little bit smaller and take less time. You can just stir it. You have to do it that way. So we are, as soon as they get a little bit toasty, I'm going to put a little bit of pepper, half a teaspoon of pepper and a teaspoon of salt, and some coconut in to the pan, and let them warm up as well. And then when they're almost ready, I will I'll take them out and I'll put the seeds in separately because it'll be easier for you to see how they are put in the blender. See, oh, tell me when.
Go.
So now you can see that they're a little bit colored, and if you were here, you could smell them. And so they're ready. They've been just pour them off into a bowl so that it can cool a little bit. And then you can add your spices to the pan. Turn it down a little bit because they'll burn quite quickly. So I've started to put the spices in. I've got the small ones are cumin. It's a common spice used in Indian food, Mexican, many different cuisines. And the large round seeds are coriander. And you have to really watch them because they burn quickly. So I can smell them now, so I'm going to add the coconut. I'm using flakes. You can use any kind of coconut. And you have to watch it because just get a spoon. Coconut sometimes sticks to the bottom. And you can already see the coconut toasting. And so I will turn it off, and I'll add salt and pepper right in here now, so we have all the spices together. The coconut kind of sticks, so you can't really. So the quinoa is absorbing the water. In the end, there'll be no water, just like when you do rice. We are going to put this and pulse it in the blender. But first, we'll do the nuts first because they take longer. And then we'll just add these in, and it will be very. Just saying, you have to be very careful because if you do it too much. Okay, so the nuts have now cooled a little bit, so we're going to chop them in the blender. Pulse it on and off so you don't get peanut butter. If you do it too fast, that's what you get. If you don't have a blender, you could put the spices. You could just rough chop the larger nuts and then put them in a bag and the spices as well, and it'll come out fine. You can do it all with a knife if you wish, but it's faster in a blender. In the end, you want it to be the consistency of very coarse salt. But it depends on what you're doing. If you rub, you want it to be finer than if you want to use it as a dip. We're almost there. The consistency is a little bit. Some of the nuts are just a little bit too big because we're going to use it as a dip, and so you dip your bread in oil, and so can't have the pieces too large or else they won't stick. If you're using it on top of salads, you can make it coarser. see that what the consistency is. That's it. So the quinoa is now cooked. You can see there's still a little bit of water in it, but it will continue to absorb the water after the heat's off. So it's ready to go now, and we'll just leave it like that for now, and we will continue on with okay. So now our main dish is loin of lamb, French cut, and I'm going to rub it with salt and pepper and some rosemary. So first I need some rosemary. Get some rosemary. It's sort of a woody herb. So it goes well inside. I've had this one for some time. And you don't really want the stalk because it's really, you can't use the stalk at all because it's too woody. Just pull off the leaves to rub it into the meat. Sometimes there's a fat on the back, which I was hoping for, but didn't get on this one. You can just score the fat like this a little bit so that the salt and pepper and herbs will go into and the fat will melt when you put it that fat side down. And a little bit more rosemary like that. I see there's like a little pocket here, so I'm going to rub the rosemary into that and try to open up a little bit to get the salt and pepper in. I'm going to push one sprig of parsley right into there, rosemary right in there. So when it cooks, it'll stay in there and it'll help to make everything taste good. And do the sides too, because I'm going to cook it as a whole piece. And do the same thing on the other side. Try to get it all over everywhere so everything tastes good. And you can just set that aside for a few minutes while so the flavors can go inside the meat. So do this one. Okay, now I'm going to check the cake. It's been in about 50 minutes, which is what it usually takes in my oven. So you can either just touch it, but it's very fragile. And just make sure that it comes out clean, and it does. So you can just... Okay, so I have 2 pomegranates to show you, as they're not that common in Canada. People may not know them. So I have 2 here to show you the difference. As they become ripe, if you can see the difference, this one's quite shiny and this one's quite dull and a little bit more angular, and so that's how you tell if they are ripe. So this is the least ripe one, so I will start with this one. There's many different opinions on how you do this. What I'm going to do today is cut both ends because I feel that it's easier. They're very hard, so then you have a flat surface to to prepare it on. This one's particularly hard. So you take a bit off the end until you see the seeds being exposed. I'll do a little bit more, it's hard to see. And that shows you where the ribs of the fruit are, and you want to cut down. That's why I cut the other end off, so it doesn't roll around. It's always good if you're using a great big knife. And you just want to score the skin, because you're going to try to then you're going to break it apart so that you can get the seeds out. And there's supposed to be 361 seeds in pomegranate. I don't know who has counted all the seeds of all the pomegranates, but I'll take the word for it. They're very good for you. Lots of vitamins. Good for your eyes. They're not usually quite this hard. So, then you can just break them apart. Like that. So then you see all these little jewels, and you can just like pull them all off, or you can just, whatever you want. It depends on the pomegranate and its ripeness. Like this one's fairly, and you just break them off. And you don't want this white stuff, it's a bit bitter. But you can deal with it after. You can run them under water, and the white stuff will float to the top. And you get all these little jewels. Evidently 361 of them. And you can make juice out of them, or put them on salads, or eat them for breakfast with yogurt. Okay, now I'm going to, the cake is cooked. This one I cooked yesterday, just so I wouldn't have to juggle a very hot cake. So this is a springform pan that I also buttered and put a piece of wax paper in the bottom. So what you really need to do, this is a very, the top of it's very kind of crumbly. That's the way it's supposed to be. And the reason, so we're going to decorate it a little bit. So just run your knife around the outside before you open the mechanism. Let's see. And there you are. So what you really need to do now is go under, just pull the wax paper off the sides, because we put it a little bit up the sides, so the batter's quite thick, but so it doesn't get underneath. It's sort of crumbly, like no, that's the way it's supposed to be. Because air is crumbly. It's not an easy process, because it is so delicate. Okay, so I took the cake out of the springform pan. It will break because there's no flour to hold it together, but it's just what it is. And if you put flour in it, it won't be as light and fluffy as it is. So what we do with this cake is we just cover it up. So just put a bit of icing sugar in a sieve and just sprinkle it all over the top. You can put a doily on it and make a pattern, or put things across it to make it pretty, but really you're just trying to kind of cover up the cracks, because it isn't because it went wrong, it's just that that's what it does. And then you just put icing sugar on it and nobody knows, because it will still hold together. Now I have a double cut piece of lamb, which I put rosemary and salt and pepper on before. Put it in a very hot pan with the fat side down, then it will make it won't stick when you turn it over. You need to cook it on all the sides, so you have to kind of keep turning it. But you just need to let it go on its own. Now, lamb should not be cooked much. I like it kind of blue. A lot of people like it medium rare. You can use a meat thermometer to check it. It should be about 140 if you like it medium rare. So I'll just let it do its thing there while I make the salad.
Yeah.
The lamb has started to cook, and it has started to brown and get all nice. And you push down both sides so that it's cooked. Now you have some fat in the pan, so you can easily put the meat part down. That it gets seasoned. And then you can go on to make your salad. When I'm entertaining, I like to enjoy my guests, so I try to have as much done before guests come, so that you can enjoy your guests and you're not just kitchen help. The problem with being a chef is sometimes that happens. So what I do in order to have things all prepped ready is I'll take the serving plate or a bowl or whatever you're putting your salad on, and put a little bit of olive oil on the bottom. We're going to put the lamb here, so I'm going to leave a little space. This is like a serving plate. And then just put a little bit of balsamic around it. And if you're using like onions, you can put it in a bowl and put your onions in it, and then they will become less strong while they marinate in it. And so you just leave your plate like that, and then you just take your greens, your 2 cups of greens, put it on top. Leave a little space for your meat. And then just put your cheese. This is enough for 2 on top. Pardon my fingers. And put the pomegranates all over it too. Put some at the side so everybody can see them. As much as you like. And so then you're sort of ready. Put a little salt on it. So you need to turn your meat, and you must have all sides of contact with it. You don't want raw meat. See that both sides are browned on the large meat portion. So I'm just doing the end. You kind of have to hold it. The rosemary is getting into the oil now, so it will help it. So that's going to sit there, so we can leave it for a few minutes. I will take my quinoa. So you have it. Okay, so I put about a tablespoon or a little less of oil and balsamic vinegar on, and so you're still going to need some at the end to pour over the salad, and you'll mix it up at the very end. So you take the other 2 tablespoons and put it in your jug, and put in the equivalent of not quite as much balsamic vinegar to taste later. And so about equal amounts of mustard and balsamic vinegar or red wine vinegar, whatever you prefer, and put a little honey in to balance the taste. And then just the mustard helps to emulsify the dressing. Just leave that till the end. As you see, the lamb is all nice and brown on the outside. The fat's melted off into the pan. It's brown on all the sides. So I've turned off the pan now, and you just need to leave it rest in the pan, or you can take it to a cutting board. When it was frozen. I'll put it again. Okay, so just take, so this is very blush, which is the way I like it. It's resting a little bit while you assemble the plate. We'll put the quinoa on the plate with the salad. You can make it into a little mold, or you can just do it this way, whichever you like. And then take a little bit of it, then put the meat on. And then sprinkle a little of the quinoa all over the salad. And so when you're serving it, so now you're ready to serve, you just take a little of the dressing and pour it over the top. And then it can be mixed up by the person eating it. A little salt on the top for everything, and there you go. Bon appetit! So now I'm going to show you how it would, one idea of how I would serve the cake. Don't be worried that it's going to fall apart. It will taste just as good. It's a little going to be cracked, but that's what it does. Just put it on the plate. And this is why we have yogurt, is because you can put it on top. Use about half this. It's a bit too much. So this is really enough for 2. put some red berries. Some on top and some in the plate. And there you have it. Bon appetit. So you can, normally I serve this with a French loaf, but you can also do it with gluten-free or vegetables or whatever you wish. So just cut up the bread. Don't make it too big because you're going to want to dip it in a couple of times. So just put your bread on the plate and pour. This is spiced olive oil, extra virgin olive oil that I put some peppers in and put it in the window until it flavored the oil. And then you just fill the other dish with this that mixture. And there you serve it like that. So, each to his own, but this is the way I like to eat it, is you dip it in your olive oil a little bit, and then into your nut mixture, and you get this little frosted piece of bread, and it's delicious. You can put it on your plate. You can. This is probably enough for two, so. But usually just eat them right away.